Well,
I love this theme music.
Yeah, I like it too. It's Throwback Thursday, and that means it is time for the second installment of our series called The Way It Was.
Yeah, we're going to be looking back at stories from this week in history, powered by the incredible archives here at CBS News. This week, spanning from January 11th to the 17th, we'll go back to 1964 with a warning for smokers that turned out to be a lifesaver.
And State of Shock relived the earthquake of 1994 that devastated Southern California.
And it's back to 1987. Computers are on the rise, and so is Techno Stress. But we begin with one of the most famous health warnings ever issued. It came during Big Tobacco's advertising heyday. For years, the industry had printed ads like this, claiming doctors endorsed smoking.
Well, United States Surgeon General Luther Terry was not one of them. And on January 11th, 1964, he linked smoking to lung cancer. 10 years later, Sharon Lovejoy filed a report on America's reaction.
It used to be that smoking was the popular thing to do. The message on the silver screen, for example, was clear. Smoking was glamorous, manly, romantic. But in 1964, that all changed.
Cigarette smoking is a health hazard of sufficient importance to the United States to warrant remedial action.
The Surgeon General's Blue Ribbon panel warned that cigarette smoking was related to almost every lung disease, cancer, bronchitis, emphysema. The death rate among smokers, they said, was 68% higher than among non-smokers.
We receive many warnings in our life, and sometimes they can save our life.
In spite of a decade of warnings, Americans are still lighting up at an alarming rate. In 1964, 50 million Americans smoked. Today, the figure is 52 million. However, the rate of new smokers is down. The National Clearinghouse for Smoking and Health says that 70 million Americans would have been smoking today if the 1964 rate of new smokers had remained the same. In 1964, the average smoker consumed 4,300 cigarettes a year. Today, the average is slightly down, 4,100 cigarettes. More than 10 million men have managed to quit since 1964, while women and teenagers have registered an increase in smoking. The American Cancer Society says it has no concrete figures on whether cigarette-related diseases have gone up or down since 1964. They do claim, however, that smokers are susceptible to more diseases than they thought.
Data which have become available since 1964 show that cigarette smoking is a major contributor to the risk of death from and illness from coronary heart disease.
They ought to be looking at many factors in their research in addition to smoking. We're not asking them to quit researching smoking. All we're saying is that let's be fair about it, let's be honest with the public and look at the total situation.
The tobacco industry, while denying that cigarettes are a health hazard, has reduced the tar and nicotine content in cigarettes by 32% since 1964. In addition, 85% of all cigarettes have filters now, compared to 15% in 1964. A decade ago, one of the main tourist stops in New York's Times Square was a giant man puffing a never-ending cigarette. Today, like 52 million other Americans, he's still smoking. Sharon Lovejoy, CBS News, New York.
Unbelievable. That Surgeon General's warning has been credited for paving the way for tobacco control. The medical journal JAMA estimates 8 million more deaths would have occurred had it not been for that warning. Tobacco control increased life expectancy by 30% since 1964. Still, 1 in 5 American adults today is a smoker.
Wow, incredible. Well, there was no warning for our next story. On January 17th, 1994, at 4:31 in the morning, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake ripped through Southern California. It took only 20 seconds to inflict damage that would take years to recover from.
CBS News had a team of reporters covering the story across the San Fernando Valley, including Bill Whitaker.
Even as Los Angeles is struggling to get over its shock, it's also struggling to get back up on its feet. In addition to the lives lost and shattered today, lots of Los Angeles, lots of its infrastructure now lies in ruins, as you can see behind me, bringing brash, busy Los Angeles to a crawl. In this city that lives by the car, today LA's lifeline was severed. Across the city, freeways collapsed and buckled. Portions of 5 major arteries are down. When the earth shook with such fury this morning,
we're having an aftershock right now, people.
Steel and concrete were no match. After decades of preparing for quakes like this, many are asking what, if anything, Los Angeles could have done better.
The serious questions that we have to ask now is whether or not we had learned those lessons in the past, or why we were not able to take steps that would have given us greater safety.
Millions of people will have to find alternate routes. A 64-car freight train derailed and leaked sulfuric acid. 10,000 people and tons of freight used to ride these rails into the city every day. Now they're twisted and useless. No one knows how long before trains will be up and running again. Virtually the entire city has been without electricity all day. The 2 major power stations were seriously damaged. Officials say they have no idea when they can restore power to nearly 2 million customers.
To my knowledge, this city has never lost all its power. Obviously, it has to be a surprise to us when we did this morning.
While most of the city's 44,000 miles of gas pipeline withstood the force of the quake, those that did blow cut service to thousands and ignited fires all across the San Fernando Valley. It will be at least a week before gas lines are repaired. But perhaps the most critical problem facing the city now is the water supply. With one of the 2 major aqueducts damaged and treatment plants not running, everyone is being warned to boil the water. Lines are forming all over the city to buy precious water and to make phone calls. Now we just had another sharp aftershock. Crews, construction crews, and utility crews are working feverishly to try to get the city back up on its feet, but it's bound to be some time before Los Angeles gets back to anything approaching normal.
And here's where the quake stands by the numbers: $40 billion in damage and economic losses. 57 people died, a number that would have been much greater had the quake not struck early in the morning. 125,000 people were left homeless, and it ranks as the costliest earthquake to hit the U.S., according to the U.S. Geological Survey.
We now turn to our Throwback 3. This is a quick look at some interesting stories from the week in history. On January 17, 1991, Operation Desert Storm began. The U.S. and coalition forces began pounding Iraq with airstrikes. The mission was in response to Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, which posed a direct threat to Saudi Arabia. 42 days later, most of Saddam's forces had surrendered, and President George H.W. Bush called a ceasefire.
6 years earlier, it was President Ronald Reagan who was dealing with preventing war. On January 12, 1985, a panel of scientists debated his plan to develop a missile defense system. It was dubbed Star Wars. The scientists concluded space technology to protect the U.S. from nuclear weapons simply wasn't there yet.
And it was not until this week in 1990 that caller ID warranted its own news report. The system was brand new and started a debate about privacy. Supporters of the device included police stations, which now had a way to see who was calling 911. But critics also worried if it was too intrusive and would it deter people from calling suicide hotlines.
By 1987, computer technology was starting to immerse itself in our daily lives, but it turned out not everyone could handle it.
Victoria Corderi reports on Techno Stress.
I am a versatile reading machine.
The simulated sights and sounds of the future are all around us. A machine that can read. Another that can reproduce an orchestra. The line is blurring between reality and computer-generated fantasy. The results may seem trifling at first. A computerized TV star.
STAR.
A talking car.
Lights are on.
Or checkout counter.
25.
But increasingly, we have little choice about machines, and the cost for all of this convenience may be high. The eventual loss of control over a large part of our lives.
There's a real sense of illusion surrounding it, and there's a tendency to ignore the very dangerous side effects of certain uses of computers.
Already, some people who work with computers feel the machines are taking over their lives.
The technology controls us instead of contributing to and enriching our lives. It's like you've traveled to worlds and places that others have never been, and you can sometimes feel like an alien.
These people sought counseling because they related better to machines than to man. Working on computers that measure time in billionths of a second alienated them from the slower pace of real life.
You're psyched into expecting much quicker responses, and I find I get short and impatient with people.
We have developed all of these technologies in order to expand our future. And in the process, we've made our future more anxious and more insecure and more problematic every day.
In this world of reality once removed, computers can, with the flick of a switch, alter what we see and hear. You may think you know what color blouse I'm wearing, but you're only seeing what the computer allows you to see. And that's what may really be troubling people about colorizing old black and white movies. The fear that technology, for the sake of technology, may color our future in a harmful way.
Because the machine exists to colorize, they colorize. We all know that there's this great, if you can do it in America, then do it and worry about the consequences later.
The consequences may be that machines developed to liberate may in fact victimize us in the long run. Just because a new compression chip in a VCR can save us time and make us talk like this.
Told him I had a big buyer in from LA. Write a book, Sonny, from here on. I'm pulling you off the street.
Do we really want to listen? Victoria Corderi, CBS News, New York.
Now I have stress looking at the lack of technology.
Right back in those days?
Absolutely.
Well, the one story that really affected me when I was watching this is, of course, Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was a young, fresh-faced, there I was, look at that, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, during Operation Desert Shield.
You look so cute, lad.
Although, to be clear, I was not in the war, but I was in the military at the time. I don't look the same at all, do I?
You don't. We've had some, opinions about who you look like. I'm not going to say.
Thank you.
They're really kind of out there.
I still had my baby fat.
Yes, you did.
Even though I was a hardcore military guy.
Much fuller in the cheeks. Got a little bit more on top, and you had a very tough.
I was trying to do my war face,
Thank you for sharing that with us.
That'll do it for this week's installment of The Way It Was. We're going to leave you with our retro moment from this week, from Charles Osgood's 1990 report on caller ID.
Companies who take delivery orders on the phone are crazy about caller ID. Caller ID advocates call it the Domino's effect.
Domino's Pizza, they are fraught with many, many cases of fraudulent orders for pizzas.
People calling up, ordering several pizzas, never picking them up, and then they've made all these pizzas with nowhere to deliver them.